for taking your time to watch this video around Adobe student licensing in higher education. My name is David Grant and I'm the Software Solutions Manager here at Academia. We'll take you through a few slides touching on our relationship with Adobe, some of the driving forces we've seen that are really resulting in a named user license model becoming more common than device licensing. We'll talk about the difference between your license options as well as the different agreements these can be ordered through. We'll talk about how you can reduce costs with a VIP agreement and some current promotions that are available, as well as value-added services through Academia, and we'll summarise at the end. Academia are really proud to have been and continue to be Adobe's largest educational reseller, have been for over 10 years. We hold a very unique partner status with Adobe. We are their only UK Platinum reseller, Education Elite partner, and Adobe signed Velocity partner in the UK. And all of that really just means we have access to the best pricing, the best resource, and again, that is focused on education and education type solutions. Our sales team are fully trained on Adobe licensing, but are supported by my team when things get more complex. And we offer a range of value-added services we'll touch on towards the end. Academia are also the first ranked supplier under the software license reseller agreement for all Adobe solutions. So for every university, you'll be a member of one of the regional purchasing consortiums. You should find your logo on the right of this slide, and that allows you to direct toward Academia for any value and any Adobe application retaining full compliance. So why have we and why do we continue to see a shift from device to named user licensing? It's worth pointing out at this stage that historically the sector and the whole of the education sector, in fairness, had tended to procure based on devices. And this was twofold. It was because you have less devices than you have students, and a device license used to be more cost effective than a named user. So in effect, it was fundamentally more cost effective just to license on-premise machines. Of course, with COVID, the need to provide access to students from home or anywhere outside of campus was a real challenge. And Adobe make this somewhat harder in the sense they do not allow you to virtualize or even provide remote access when you have a device license model. So what this has meant for many education establishments, particularly in the last academic year starting 2020 through to 2021, is that you've potentially committed to a device-based model. You've renewed your existing agreements, or you may be part of the JISC multi-year agreement, whereby you have lots of on-premise devices licensed. However, you've had no compliant manner in which to provide access to students or staff who cannot physically get to site. So again, this has really caused a challenge for the sector, and in many cases have resulted in many having to procure student or user-based licenses, either instead of device licensing or at times in addition to your device licensing, which obviously has resulted in an additional cost for you. Another point worth considering here is the whole concept of student access. We hear a lot from a lot of our key vendors and from the sector itself around how flexible teaching is really important. Concepts like flip the classroom, but the whole point of really empowering a student to be able to complete their studies, to learn outside of your physical environments is really key, and I think it's going to become more important as institutions look to grow their student population, and that may be through utilising international students, delivering more distance courses, for example. So a really valid point, and I think more so even when we think about Adobe and the concept of it being a creative tool, and therefore students really want to be inspired when they're doing this work, you know, and if they're like me, they may prefer working later in the evenings and potentially not from a library or a lab environment, for example. Final point on this slide is just the concept of JISC. So I touched on this a moment ago. JISC offer a really good agreement for many education establishments, which have allowed you to license your entire on-premise estate and to get some staff home use as well. And that's a 3-year agreement, which is coming up to its expiration. And the point of this isn't to say ignore JISC, don't go with JISC, but just certainly to consider the value of licensing devices. So when we talk a bit more around user versus devices, this table pretty much summarizes it all. So user versus shared device licensing. Can you install it on a personal device? You can with a user, you cannot with a shared device license. Can you provide remote or virtual access to the software? You can with a user license, you can't with a device. And worth just stopping there for one moment, you may be asking yourself, well, if I've procured a student license, how do I then need to get a device license to cover an on-premise machine they may be remotely accessing? And the answer to that is no. If you license a student, you're entitled to install the software on any on-premise machine, and that allows you to provide remote access, and it allows the student to physically access any machines on-premise as well. And that's illustrated on the final point. So fundamentally here, a user-based license is far more effective. A student or any licensed users can access it on a personal device. They can access it on any on-premise machine, and you can deliver it via a virtual delivery mechanism or through remote access. Device licenses anybody can use, but only if they're at that licensed machine and physically on-premise. A couple other points worth noting here. One relates kind of back to my point on the previous slide around how many device licenses do we actually even need next year? Can we consider, or do we need to, are there any students who we know will definitely be coming to site next year? Again, it's a really valid question. If you don't know the answer to that, then is there any value in licensing device at all? And the concept of socially distanced labs is a really valid point. So probably less applicable now than what it may have been a year ago as you've redistributed machines throughout campus. But if you still have socially distanced labs, then what we're finding is it's not a case of only half the machines in that lab are accessible. It's wiping out the machine to my left, to my right, in front of me, behind me, and may mean that lab's down to 25%, maybe a third utilization. And it's just a really valid point. Think about how many devices you have available, particularly as we're planning for the next academic year. And final point on this slide is this is not a case of necessarily user versus device. A hybrid model is probably going to be best suited for a lot of higher education establishments. And this may look like licensing your core users, students who need Adobe as part of their studies, essential software for those students. License them on a user basis, and that way, if there is another lockdown, if that student can't come to site, they can still access it wherever they are, and you get the additional benefits through application delivery. But you may still want to cater for hobbyists, for casual users. It could be a business studies student, for example, who wishes to learn how to build a website or how to build a flyer to help promote their business. So it still relates to their course, may not be deemed core for what they're doing. And on that basis, you may choose to license a set number of physical on-premise machines, for example. So if anybody does physically come to your library or particular open access areas, they can still continue to utilize Adobe software. An interesting slide here. So we've talked about user versus device, and then you have agreement options, and you have what's called a VIP agreement, an ETLA, which is the enterprise agreements through JISC, and then bespoke ETLAs. And just for the purposes of this slide, we're very much talking around user-based licensing, although the same agreements are in place for device models as well. So starting at the top, you have a VIP agreement, which is a 1-year commitment that prorates. The minimum order quantity is only one, that has a very low entry point. And this is really ideal for those that require a hybrid model, maybe a mixture of user versus devices. However, you get to a point where the unit cost may not be the best or most cost effective model for you. So we tend to say if you're looking at this from a student license perspective, VIP can be ideal if you're looking at 1,000 and below students. It's also really useful if you have term licenses or need term licenses, whereby you may have courses running post-December to the end of your academic year that require Adobe software, and just licensing for a 4 or 5 month period, the proration on VIP can really help that, and I'll expand on that when we get to the next slide. Line 2 on this is the ETLA through JISC. So I earlier mentioned that the ETLA through JISC is expiring, and customers have the ability to renew for another 3 years, subject to that being renegotiated. This is a separate agreement. This is the 3-year student agreement, and it's in its final year. These agreements tend to have a much higher minimum order quantity. So 500 we understand is the minimum, and apologies, we have had to star these as we do not get these this information officially. So this is our understanding through often what we've heard from our customers. Again, unit cost varies depending on what your commitment level is, and generally we would say this is ideal for sort of heavily creative institutions, those that probably need 1,000 to 5,000 students licensed. This could be your best option. The final option here is a bespoke ETLA. They're quite rare in HE, but there are probably maybe 10 to 20 in the sector. And these are really ideal when you need the scale, you need the low unit cost, but the JISC ETLAs do not provide you with the license model you need, in terms of they don't, that you need a lot more than 5,000 students, for example, or you may have other requirements in terms of bespoke utilization of device licenses, Acrobat site-wide, for example. So these can be really, really good when you're in those scenarios. And again, unfortunately, price is all determined by Adobe, but we're more than happy to discuss what your options may be under an ETLA. So to try and summarize this, the agreement options, VIP gives you the most flexibility. It tends to have a higher unit cost, but not always, depending on term. And ETLA tends to provide the lowest unit cost, but has the least flexibility when we look at the term, and also when we look at the products made available. So with a VIP, there are a couple of mechanisms, and I've almost stolen my own thunder here, but to help you reduce your pricing. So first point, quick one, is that VIP has levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Level 4 is the highest level of discount, which you can achieve at 100 plus. Most institutions get there in their own right, but you may have a ETLA and just have a small requirement. We can ensure you can get access to level 4 pricing at no additional cost. The main point here, though, is what you can do with proration. So at the bottom, this table is to represent an Adobe agreement, which has, let's say, a start date of July the 1st. So you could set up your agreement on July the 1st. And I should caveat this. You can see the numbers I've used just for the simplicity of maths. It's very close to the cost of a student license, in fairness, under VIP anyway, but yeah, do not hold me to the pricing. Here is the point. So 1st of July, I set up a new agreement, and great, I want to order a new license at that point. It's going to cost me £120. However, I could set up my agreement on the 1st of July and not order that license until August, where it becomes 110, or September, where it becomes 100. For a lot of HE, you can probably get away with October, which then comes down to 90. And I also mentioned earlier that this can be really good if you have agreements that may be term-based or requirements that are term-based. So if you're buying a license in January under this example, you're talking half the price to license yourself to the end of the academic year. You also get a grace period. You get 30 days grace, which can be good, a little bit of a buffer at the end of the academic year, potentially as you identify whether you need to renew it all at that point, or whether it's only for certain postgrads, or whether you can just leave it to lapse and then order your licenses a few months later, and again, benefit from proration. So a big tip from us is to create a VIP agreement with a start date at the end of your academic year. So if the end of your academic year is the 1st of July, again, staying in line with this example here, not only does it allow you to benefit from proration, as we talked about, but it also means halfway through the year, a curveball comes at you and you said, no, we're not getting any user licenses. We're having everybody physically on site. Great, but for whatever reasons, another lockdown comes in January and February, and you're not then having to procure a license for 12 months. You're able to buy a license that expires at the end of your usage period. The other big advantage of that is it allows you to then almost reset come summer, look at all your available options and make sure you make the right decision for your institution going forwards. Oh, 90's popped in, there we go. So there are also some promotions available at the moment. So for higher education, Adobe have introduced a student pack. I mentioned this right at the beginning. Named user licenses used to be more expensive than the device. That is no longer the case, and certainly student packs are what's making that accessible. And not only that, Adobe have introduced a further 25% discount off of higher education student packs. We expect this to expire come November time. And in addition, at the same time, we expect the minimum order quantity reduction to end. So a higher education student pack usually has a minimum order quantity of 150. That is now only 100. The next 3 promotions are all caveated as they're subject to the type of agreements you have and your circumstance. So please speak to us if you're not sure if you're eligible for these. The first is a renewal promotion. Many customers benefited from this last summer. Not necessarily a way of reducing costs, but maybe a way of giving you a lot more licensing for the same price, particularly helping you get user licensing. The next one here is around Acrobat. Again, most education establishments, particularly in HE, will have lots of legacy perpetual Acrobat. So Adobe are really keen to encourage customers to move to their subscription model. And this promotion entitles you to up to a 50% discount for 3 years on Acrobat subscription. Does require you to have old perpetual Acrobat, and again, I'm sure we can help you understand and identify what you have if you're not sure. And a valid point on this is Adobe are killing off support on older versions. So currently on perpetual licensing, it's only Acrobat 2017 and 2020 that are currently supported, and Acrobat 2017 is expected to go end of support next calendar year. The final point in here is Adobe Sign. Adobe have introduced a really good promotion for Sign once you get to 5,000 plus transactions. It is a really heavy discount on pricing. Again, we have seen huge interest and uptake of digital signature technologies from various manufacturers, and Adobe have got a very, very good solution, and it's priced at an uncomparable rate at the moment. So again, speak to us if these are a challenge for your organization at the moment. I mentioned we offer some free value-added services, and a couple of these link into points I've mentioned throughout. So a VIP agreement, I mentioned start one at the end of your academic year. So please do start an agreement at the end of your academic year. To set up an agreement, you do have to order a single license, but we will do that free of charge. So we will take the hit, we'll order a single license for you free of charge. There is no strings attached. And again, whether you use that agreement immediately or whether it just stays there as a just in case agreement, we recommend it either way. The second point here relates to the screenshot. So that's captured from an institution site and is a bespoke portal that we can offer. These portals integrate with your punch-out solutions. We work with the majority of those. And what can work really well is, particularly if you have devolved procurement, for example, users can access our store, punch out into our store. They can procure Adobe products, and if it's under a VIP license, these can prorate to fall in line with your agreement expiry date, and the price will move accordingly. And not only will it allow them to order the license easier in a streamlined manner, we'll also allocate the license if required as well. These are chargeable services, but these can be really good at reducing your admin around procuring licenses and also delivering licenses, helping to improve end user experience. A few other free services worth noting. The first one will potentially help you if you're interested in an Acrobat promotion or just curious as to what's going on. So we can help obtain a historical consumption report from Adobe that will show you all of your licenses purchased, everything you've ever purchased, what you're currently entitled to. And again, this is really good if maybe you're new to the organization, potentially you've have now or historically have had devolved procurement, conscious of rogue buyers that we all have in most HEs, so on and so forth. We also offer free license consultation, which will probably just be me, but talking about a lot of these points we've touched on today without the caveats and the asterisks, to talk about your particular needs and how we feel, or what license options we feel may best suit you. And in addition, from Adobe, there is a huge wealth of academic resources through their education exchange. Recommend this to everybody. Great thing for you to share on to academic staff, again, sort of showing more value from IT. And they can really help. So they will show you how you can use one particular product in one particular course for one particular age group. So how can business studies first year degree students use Photoshop? There'll be a project that another lecturer has done somewhere that you can utilize, dare I say, plagiarize, and help develop how your curriculum evolves. In addition, there are some free certifications. So Adobe have launched something called the Adobe Creative Educator, completely free. And it's a great way, again, for those staff that have an interest in Adobe to enhance their skills, to learn more, to become part of a community. And I understand there's a bit of swag in there. Everybody likes a free T-shirt or whatever they're giving. So again, good to be wary of. So just to summarize, user-based licensing is far more flexible than device-based licensing. We need to consider what next academic year may bring in terms of our students going to be here. Do we know if any particular students are going to be here? The concept of sort of hybrid licensing, the concepts of socially distanced labs, these are all factors in what's going to result in the best decision for you going forwards, as well as the best agreement options. Start a new VIP, I've said this July, but at the end of your academic year, again, that's free to do, and again, could give you a get out of jail. If you have any immediate questions, as I said, my name's David Grant. If you have my details, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, there's some generic details here that will come straight through to your applicable account manager and to my team. We'll be more than happy to speak to you on a one-to-one basis and arrange a free consultation call. Thank you all for your time today and listening to us on Adobe licensing.